They don't tell you how quiet it is when something begins to go wrong. There's no dramatic music, no warning sign, no flashing red light above your teenager's bedroom door. Just a slow, creeping shift that only makes sense in hindsight. At first, it's a shorter reply than usual, a sharpness in the way they say, "What?" when you call their name. Then it's dinner left untouched, eye contact avoided, a slammed door that you swear didn't used to slam. And somehow, it's enough to make your chest tighten, even if you don't have the words for why. That's what happened with my son, Noah, 14 years old, tall for his age, pale skin, dark brown hair that always falls into his eyes no matter how often he brushes it back. He used to be loud, not in a bad way, just present. He'd narrate his video games out loud, sing snippets of songs under his breath, barge into the kitchen to show me some meme that made absolutely no sense to me. But over the past few months, he started fading. It wasn't sudden. That's what made it so easy to excuse. He's tired. It's school stress. It's hormones. It's just being 14, right? That's what I told myself. Until one afternoon, when I went into his room to grab his laundry and saw his laptop open on the bed. Normally, I wouldn't look. I've always tried to give him space. I believed in trust, but the screen was on. The browser was open. And what I saw, it wasn't what I expected. The video was paused, mid-frame. A man, maybe 20, maybe 30, was shouting into the camera, his face red, his fists clenched, his words frozen in captions across the bottom of the screen. Something about weakness and real men and fighting back. I clicked out, confused. The history told me more. Pages and pages of videos like it. Compilation clips of street fights. Masculinity motivation. Montages, commentary laced with aggression, mockery, and something that made my skin crawl, that quiet kind of anger disguised as strength. And that's when I started shaking. Not because Noah had seen something inappropriate, but because I had no idea that he was looking for something, and he found that instead. It's easy to forget that our kids don't always go searching for darkness. Sometimes, it finds them, wrapped in slick thumbnails, buried in trending tabs, disguised as confidence, as power, as truth. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, laptop on my lap, clicking through everything he'd been watching. It was a rabbit hole, one I hadn't even known existed, one that terrified me. And the more I watched, the more I realized how subtle it all was. The content wasn't outright illegal or violent. It was casual, fast-paced, sometimes even funny, until it wasn't. Until the punchlines became punches. Until the motivation became manipulation. Until I started to recognize certain phrases in Noah's voice that I'd assumed were just sarcasm. Things like, "I'm not going to be soft about it," or "Everyone's too sensitive now," or worst of all, "You wouldn't understand." He was right. I didn't understand. Not yet. But I was about to. I didn't bring it up that night. I didn't want to explode, to accuse, to scare him into lying. But the silence between us felt heavier than ever. He sat across from me at the dinner table, scrolling through his phone, his face lit by the screen, and I just watched him, wondering what he was seeing, who was talking to him, what was shaping him when I wasn't looking. And for the first time in my parenting life, I felt small, like I was watching him through glass, there, but unreachable. That night, I wrote in my phone's notes app, "He's slipping into something I don't recognize, and I don't know if I'm supposed to pull him back, or follow him in far enough to walk him out." I didn't sleep, and I didn't know what to do next, but I knew I couldn't pretend anymore that being home meant being safe, because the truth is, the danger wasn't outside. It was glowing from a screen, right under my roof, and it had already started to change him. But before we dive into this thrilling story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like so that YouTube can show you more content like this. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen holding a cup of coffee I didn't remember making. Noah was already gone. Early bus for math club, or so he said. The truth was, I hadn't checked. I was too wrapped up in a storm of quiet panic. Not the kind you scream about, but the kind that hums in your body, under your ribs, making everything feel like it might fall apart if you breathe too loudly. I opened my laptop and typed into the search bar, "Why is my teenage son watching violent content online?" What came up was a maze. Articles, podcasts, forums full of other parents, some terrified like me, others defensive, Some blamed video games, others blamed the internet. One mother wrote, "He used to be sweet. Now he slams doors and mutters things under his breath. I miss my son." I stared at that line longer than I should have, because I did too. I missed him. I hadn't lost him, not fully, but I was starting to feel the edges fray, like he was slipping through my fingers, quietly, politely, without realizing he was leaving. By noon, I was 4 tabs deep in adolescent psychology. Did you know the teenage brain is wired to seek intensity? Not joy, not peace. Intensity. Dopamine spikes. Emotional extremes. Risk. Stimulation. It's not personal. It's neurological. That doesn't mean it hurts less. It just means sometimes they're not rebelling. Sometimes they're trying to feel something, or understand something, or just belong somewhere, even if it's in the comments section of a video that makes your heart sink. Later that day, I picked Noah up from school. I offered. He accepted, with a shrug, not because he wanted to spend time with me. He said the bus smelled like cheese. The car ride was quiet, like most of them were now. He wore his hood up, earbuds in. I didn't say much, but I watched him from the corner of my eye. The way he slouched, how tightly he held his phone. I wondered what he was listening to, what was being poured into him while I drove him home like everything was fine. When we pulled into the driveway, I didn't turn off the car. "Noah," I said, gently, "can I ask you something?" He pulled one earbud out. "Yeah," I swallowed. "Have you been watching different stuff online lately? Like, more intense things?" His body tensed. Slightly. Barely. But I noticed. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice sharp. "I'm not accusing you," I said quickly. "I'm just trying to understand. I know a lot of videos now come across as funny or motivational, but end up being more aggressive or negative. I saw one on your laptop by accident, and it scared me a little." He didn't answer. His face stayed still, unreadable. Then, "It's not like I'm watching anything illegal. Everyone watches stuff like that." "Okay," I said, calmly. "But just because everyone does something doesn't mean it's good for them." Another silence. Then he laughed, but not in a joyful way, more like a bark of disbelief. "You're just freaking out because it's not cartoons and puppies." I smiled, just a little. "Maybe, but I'm freaking out because I love you. And I notice you've changed. A little. You've been angrier, quieter, more distant. And if something's bothering you, I want to understand it, not control it. Just be part of it, with you." He looked out the window, jaw tight. I waited. No rush, no lecture, just space. Finally, he said, "Sometimes I watch those videos because they make me feel, I don't know, like I'm not weak." My heart broke a little. "You think being emotional makes you weak?" I asked. He shrugged. "It's just, school's been rough. Some guys are jerks. And the stuff I watch is like a way to fight back, I guess. Even if it's just in my head." I breathed in slowly, not to calm myself, to keep from crying. "I understand that," I said. "I really do. But anger that just sits there, it grows. And when someone teaches you to stay angry, it's usually because they want to control you, not because they want to help." He didn't respond, but he didn't run, and that was enough. Later that night, I texted him from downstairs. "Hey, dinner's ready. And also, if you ever want to show me what you're watching, I'll watch it with you. No judgment, just curiosity. I want to see what you see." He didn't reply right away, but 10 minutes later, he came downstairs. No phone, no earbuds, just him. "I found this one video," he said. "It's not awful, but it made me think." He handed me his phone, and we watched it, together. It wasn't a fix. It wasn't a breakthrough, but it was a beginning. And in this season of parenting, that's everything. The next afternoon, I came home to find Noah in the living room. That in itself was strange. He almost never left his bedroom willingly. He was on the floor, legs crossed, laptop open, a hoodie pulled over his head like a shield. When he saw me come in, he looked up briefly, then back at the screen. "Hey," I said, gently cautious. He nodded. "Hey." I walked into the kitchen, heart pounding for no reason except that everything suddenly felt delicate, like I was standing in a house made of glass and one wrong word might shatter the progress we'd made the day before. I busied myself with making tea, pretending I wasn't holding my breath. Then I heard him say, "There's this guy I follow. He talks about how guys are always expected to be tough, even when they're falling apart. He says it's okay to feel like no one sees you." I didn't turn around right away. I just stood at the counter, holding the spoon I'd been using to stir the tea, stunned by how much he'd just told me in so few words. "And do you feel that way?" I asked carefully. "Like no one sees you?" There was a pause. "Sometimes," he said, "like it's not anyone's fault. I don't know what I'm supposed to be. One day I feel okay, and the next I want to punch a wall for no reason. And then I feel stupid for feeling that way." I turned around then, slowly. He wasn't looking at me, but he hadn't shut down either. He was still open. A crack, maybe, but a real one. "Can I sit?" I asked. He shrugged. "Sure." I sat down on the rug across from him, hands around my mug, and let a few moments pass in silence. "You know," I said, "your brain right now is like a construction site. Everything's shifting, rewiring, testing limits. That feeling of not knowing who you are. It's actually normal. It's even healthy. But it's also scary, especially when no one tells you that." He finally looked at me, a flicker of curiosity in his expression. Yeah, and you're not alone in it. Every teenager goes through some version of this, even the ones who look like they have it all figured out." He leaned back on his elbows, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. "The thing is," I continued, "some of the stuff you've been watching, those videos, they pretend to give answers. Easy ones, fast ones. They say, here's how to be a man, here's how to be powerful, here's who to blame when you feel small. And I get why it feels good. It gives you something to hold on to." He didn't argue. "But Noah, real strength, the kind that lasts, doesn't come from yelling or controlling or hiding your emotions. It comes from learning how to sit with those hard feelings and not let them control you." He looked down at his hands, thumbs pressing against each other. "Sometimes I feel like if I show how I really feel, people will think I'm weak," he said. "Like I'm not good enough." "You are good enough," I said without hesitation. "And feeling things doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It makes you whole." We sat there for a while after that. No more deep talk, just presence. The laptop eventually closed. The hoodie came off. He asked what we were having for dinner. It was like watching color return to a photo that had been fading. That night, after he went to bed, I found myself scrolling again, not through his browser history this time, but through articles about masculinity and teen mental health. One stood out to me. It said, "The greatest risk isn't that boys will become violent. It's that they will go numb and never come back." That line stopped me cold, because I could see it so clearly now. The numbness wasn't just about the content. It was about the lack of safe space to talk about what it stirred up inside them. And if they couldn't talk about it with us, they'd find someone else who would, even if that someone was angry, toxic, or misleading. Before bed, I wrote in my journal. Today, he told me how he feels. He handed me the most fragile part of himself, unsure if I'd drop it. And I didn't. I held it, carefully, quietly, and I think, just maybe, he felt seen. I left my bedroom door open that night, not because I expected him to come in, but because I wanted him to know he still could. It was always going to happen. Progress with a teenager isn't a straight line. It zigzags, loops back, jumps ahead, and then sinks again when you least expect it. That's what nobody really tells you. That healing, connection, all of it, doesn't arrive in one big heart-to-heart. It comes in waves. Some days feel like breakthroughs. Others, like you're right back at the beginning. Thursday was one of those days. I got a call from the school counselor just after lunch. "Nothing serious," she said, trying to cushion the blow. "But we thought you should know. Noah got into a verbal altercation with another student. Apparently, there was some name-calling, some yelling in the hallway. He didn't get physical, but it got heated." I thanked her, asked all the usual questions, tried to sound calm and collected, but by the time I hung up, my heart was racing, my mouth was dry. I was replaying every conversation we'd had in the last week, trying to figure out where this came from. Had I missed a sign again? Had I let my guard down too soon? He walked through the door that afternoon like it was any other day, dropped his backpack, kicked off his shoes, headed straight for the fridge. I waited, and then I said, "Your counselor called." He didn't look at me. Oh, I repeated, trying to keep my tone even. "She's making a big deal out of nothing," he said. "The guy said something stupid. I told him to shut up, and he acted like I threatened his life or something." I folded my arms. "Noah, yelling in the hallway and getting written up isn't nothing. He was being a jerk," he snapped, louder than necessary. "But yeah, go ahead, take his side. That's what everyone else does." "I'm not on his side," I said. "I'm trying to understand what's happening with you." "I told you," he said, voice rising again. "Nothing's happening. You're just looking for something to fix because you think I'm broken." That stopped me cold. He stormed up the stairs, his footsteps like thunder overhead, and just like that, the wall was back. That night, I sat alone at the dinner table, staring at the empty chair across from me. His plate of spaghetti went cold. The ache in my chest returned, not sharp this time, but dull and heavy, the kind that lives in your bones. I almost went up there, almost knocked, almost yelled back, but I didn't, because I remembered something. Every reaction is a message. If I barged in, angry or hurt, I'd be saying, "You're right, this is about control." If I waited, just a little, maybe I could say something else. So I left his plate covered. I turned off the lights. I waited. At 9:17 p.m., I heard footsteps, then the soft clink of a fork against a plate. I stayed on the couch, pretending not to listen. After a while, he walked in, still holding the fork. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I looked at him, eyes red, shoulders sagging. The anger was gone. All that remained was whatever had been under it. "You're not broken," I said. "You're hurting. That's not the same thing." He sat down next to me. "I didn't want to yell," he said. "It just comes out. And then I feel stupid for losing control. And then I get mad that I feel stupid." I nodded slowly. "That's called a shame loop." He blinked. "That's a thing. It's a real thing," I said. "You get mad, you regret it, the regret turns into shame, and the shame becomes more anger. It's exhausting, and it's normal." He stared at the floor for a long time. "Sometimes I wish I could just turn off my brain," he whispered. "I know," I said. "But your brain is trying to grow. It's working overtime right now, and that's hard, but we can work with it. Together." After a long pause, he said, "Do you think I'm a bad kid?" That broke me. I pulled him close, taller than me now, but still my boy, and I said, "No, I think you're a kid who's going through hard things in a loud world, and I think you're strong enough to keep going." He didn't hug me back. Not right away, but he didn't pull away either. That was enough. Later, after he went to bed, I opened my journal. He said he felt stupid for losing control. I said he was human. He said he wanted to turn off his brain. I said I'd help him carry it. This is what parenting looks like now. Less fixing, more sitting in the mess, less punishment, more presence. Not because he deserves a pass, but because he deserves to be understood. And I'm still learning how to do that, every single day. And if you are enjoying the story, help us out by subscribing to the channel and giving a like. When he said yes, I didn't believe him at first. It was the morning after the hallway incident. The air between us had settled into something fragile but calm, like the kind of silence that comes after a storm. Not quite peace, but something close. I was making scrambled eggs when I said, trying to sound casual, "Hey, I was thinking, maybe it'd help to talk to someone. Not me. Not your dad. Just someone who knows how to help with big feelings." Noah didn't look up from his cereal. He just kept eating. I expected the usual. A shrug, a groan, a sarcastic, "So you do think I'm crazy." But instead, he said, "Okay, once." I paused, spatula midair. "Okay?" I asked, trying not to sound too surprised. He nodded. "Yeah, just to see. But if it's weird, I'm not going back." "Fair," I said, returning to the stove like my heart wasn't pounding in my chest. I spent the entire day researching therapists. I didn't want anyone too intense, too soft, too clinical. I needed someone who spoke teenager, not textbook. I finally landed on a woman named Dana Marks, a licensed therapist who worked with boys around Noah's age. Her bio was short, direct, no flowery language. Just one line stood out to me. "I believe young people don't need to be fixed. They need to be heard." I booked a session. When I told Noah, he didn't say much, just asked, "Do I have to talk right away?" "No," I said. "You don't have to do anything but show up." He nodded once. "Cool." The following Tuesday, we pulled into a quiet office park. The building was beige and boring, which I hoped meant safe and predictable. Noah wore his hoodie up and kept his arms crossed the entire walk to the door. I could feel his resistance in every step, but he kept walking. Dana greeted us with a smile that wasn't too big, which I appreciated. She looked to be in her late 30s, jeans and sneakers, a clipboard in one hand, and a calm in her eyes that felt real. "Hi, Noah," she said. "You want to come in? You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to." He looked at me, uncertain. "It's okay," I said. "I'll be right here." He followed her in. I sat in the waiting room, pretending to scroll through my phone while watching the clock every 30 seconds. 30 minutes felt like 3 hours. When the door finally opened again, he walked out first, his face unreadable. I stood up. "Hey," he shrugged. "She's not terrible." I smiled, trying to hide the relief pouring through me. "I'll take that." On the way home, he was quiet. Not sullen, just thoughtful. Then, as we pulled into the driveway, he said, "She didn't ask about what I watch online. She asked how I feel when I watch it." I turned off the ignition. And I didn't know how to answer. I guess. Sometimes it makes me feel powerful. Other times it makes me feel worse. Like I'm behind, or not enough. I looked at him, the boy who used to race Matchbox cars across the kitchen floor, now staring at his own hands like they were part of someone he didn't fully recognize. "You're not behind, Noah," I said, "and you are enough. I know it probably doesn't always feel like that, but I'll keep reminding you until you start to believe it." He nodded, slowly. "She said I could come back, if I want." I didn't ask if he would. I didn't offer to book it. I just said, "The door's open." That night, I didn't journal. I just sat by the window after he went to bed, holding a blanket around my shoulders, breathing in the stillness. There were no fireworks, no miraculous shift, but something had moved. A layer, a wall, a breath of trust. He went. He spoke. He thought about how he feels, and told me. That was more than I had the right to expect. And yet, maybe that's how it starts. Not with a fix, but with a crack in the silence, wide enough to let something honest through. You think you know the story. You think you know your child's life, their routines, their mood shifts, their little ups and downs, because you live in the same house. You share meals. You wash their clothes. You ask them how school was, and smile when they say fine, even when something inside you whispers, that's not the whole answer. But we fill in the gaps with what we hope is true, because the alternative, that there's something we're not seeing, feels like failure. It was a week after Noah's first therapy session when he finally opened up. We were in the car again, driving to the grocery store, of all places. He had insisted on coming with me, which in itself was unusual. He used to love grocery trips when he was little. He'd sit in the cart and help navigate, but since hitting middle school, he mostly stayed home unless bribed with snacks. That day, though, he climbed into the passenger seat without a word. I didn't question it. We were halfway there when he said, without looking at me, "Do you remember when I got in trouble last semester for skipping lunch?" I blinked, caught off guard. "I remember the school called. You said you just didn't feel like eating." He let out a bitter laugh. "That's what I told them." I waited. He pulled his hoodie sleeves over his hands, his version of armor. Then he said, "It wasn't because I wasn't hungry. It was because of this one kid, Drew. He used to call me names when I walked into the cafeteria. Stupid stuff, but loud enough for people to laugh." I felt my stomach drop. "And I know I should have said something," he added quickly, like he was trying to protect me from feeling bad. But it was just easier to skip lunch, sit in the library, pretend I had work to do. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Noah, it wasn't every day," he rushed on. "Just enough to make me feel like crap. I didn't tell anyone, not even Harper. I felt stupid. Like, if I couldn't handle that, how was I supposed to handle real life?" I pulled the car into the parking lot but didn't move to get out. I turned to face him. "You never have to minimize something just because it seems small from the outside," I said. "Pain doesn't come with a measuring stick. If it hurt you, it matters." He nodded slowly, eyes still fixed on his lap. I think that's why I started watching those videos, he admitted. They made me feel like I had armor, like I wasn't the quiet kid skipping lunch, like I could fight back, even if it was just in my head. I reached over and rested my hand on his arm. You don't need to fight to prove your strength, Noah, I said. You already showed strength by surviving that, by getting through it without becoming like him. He looked at me then, really looked. I don't want to be angry all the time, he said, but sometimes it feels safer than being sad. My chest ached. I know, I said, but anger is a wall. Sadness is a bridge. One keeps people out, the other lets them in. He didn't say anything after that, but he squeezed my hand before getting out of the car. And that small gesture undid me more than any apology or hug could have, because I saw the truth. Behind every distant stare, every sarcastic tone, every slammed door, there had been a scared boy, trying to stay standing with no tools except silence and screen light. That night, I found the old lunchbox he used to carry in kindergarten. I didn't show it to him. I just held it in my hands for a moment and remembered the way he used to run toward me after school, all smiles and sticky fingers and backpack askew. He was still that boy, just with more weight on his shoulders. Later, I opened my journal. He skipped lunch to avoid pain. He armored up with pixels and pretend power. And today, he finally laid down the shield long enough to let me see the wound. He's healing, and so am I. Not because we've fixed anything, but because we've stopped pretending there's nothing to fix. You never forget the first time your child makes a hard decision, not because you told them to, but because they chose it for themselves. It was a Saturday morning when Noah came into the kitchen, still half asleep, hair sticking up on one side, wearing the same hoodie from the day before. I was making pancakes, the cinnamon kind he always says he doesn't like, but always eats 3 of. He stood there for a second, watching me. Then he said, "Can I book another session with Dana?" I froze, spatula midair, heartbeat thudding in my chest. "You want to?" I asked, careful not to sound too eager, too proud. I knew the look on my face could send him running. He shrugged. "I think it helped. And she listens. Like, she doesn't rush to explain things. She just lets me say stuff and sit in it for a while." I turned back to the stove, flipping a pancake to give myself a second to breathe. "That's great," I said casually. "You want me to text her?" He nodded. "Yeah, not, like, every week or anything. Just sometimes." I texted Dana that afternoon. She replied within an hour. "Absolutely. Noah is welcome anytime." I didn't cry. Not then. But later that night, I did. Quietly. In the laundry room, of all places. I sat on the floor between a pile of towels and a basket of socks, and let a few tears fall. Not out of sadness, but out of relief. Because for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't dragging him toward help. He was walking toward it on his own. That week, something shifted in the air between us. It wasn't constant, and it wasn't dramatic, but I could feel it. He started coming downstairs more often. Sat at the table with his sketch pad open. He'd started doodling again, mostly characters and scenes from games he liked. Sometimes he'd show me without saying anything, just turn the sketch pad toward me and watch for my reaction. He laughed more, not always with me, but nearby, in the same room. That alone felt like a gift. One night, we were sitting in the living room, both on our phones, when he suddenly said, "You know, I used to think therapy was for people who couldn't handle life." I looked up, surprised. And now I think life is hard, and most people just pretend they're fine. So maybe talking about it is smarter than stuffing it down. I smiled. That's a pretty big realization. He nodded. Yeah, Dana said emotions are like guests. If you ignore them, they start banging on the door. If you let them in, they usually just want 5 minutes and a snack. I laughed out loud. She sounds smart. He grinned. She is. And then he went back to scrolling, like he hadn't just said something that would sit in my heart for weeks. Later that night, I sat in bed thinking about how far we'd come, and how none of it had happened the way I imagined it would. There was no big confrontation, no one fix-it conversation, just 1,000 small choices, to listen instead of panic, to stay instead of storm off, to ask instead of assume. I wrote in my journal, he chose to go back, not because I pushed, because I backed off, because I made space instead of making rules, because I let him show me who he was becoming. even when I didn't understand it yet. This is what trust looks like now. Not full access, not constant closeness, just the quiet knowing. If he needs me, really needs me, he knows I'll come. And maybe even more important, he knows he can walk to me too. It happened on a rainy Tuesday, the kind of gray, soggy day where everything feels a little heavier, a little slower. Noah had left for school like usual, hoodie up, earbuds in, cereal bar in hand. I watched him walk to the bus stop through the kitchen window, the back of his sweatshirt already damp from the drizzle. I didn't know that something had shifted for him until later that evening, after dinner. He came into the kitchen while I was loading the dishwasher and hovered for a second like he was waiting for the right moment. I didn't turn around. I just kept rinsing plates, giving him time. "I cried today," he said. I stopped. The water kept running. I turned, slowly. He was standing there with his hands in the pocket of his hoodie, eyes low, not embarrassed, but raw, open. "At school?" I asked softly. He nodded. "There was this presentation in English," he said. "We had to write about someone who influenced us. A bunch of people picked celebrities or athletes. I picked Grandpa, my dad. Noah had only known him for the first 7 years of his life, but they'd been close. My dad had been one of those quiet, steady men, rarely emotional, but always present. He used to sit on the porch with Noah, just listening to him ramble about Minecraft and dinosaurs and whatever else his mind could latch onto. He used to tell me I was interesting," Noah said, eyes glistening now. "Even when I talked too much or got stuff wrong, he never made me feel dumb." Tears started slipping down his face, and he didn't wipe them away. And when I was reading what I wrote, it just hit me. I miss him, and I've been so angry lately. I think part of it was, I didn't know how to be sad. I stepped toward him. "You don't have to hide sadness to be strong," I said. "He'd be proud of you for saying what you feel, for letting it out." He nodded, wiping his nose with his sleeve, then gave a shaky laugh. "Some kid in the back called me a crybaby. That burned. I wanted to reach for him, to fix it, to march into the school and demand better, but I didn't. I stayed calm." "What did you do?" I asked. I looked at him and said, "Yeah, and..." He smiled a little. I think that freaked him out. I laughed, through my own tears. He leaned against the counter, and for a while, we just stood there, both of us crying, both of us okay. Later that night, he came to sit beside me on the couch. No hoodie, no headphones, just him, wrapped in a blanket we'd had since he was little. "I'm not done being angry," he said. "I still feel it sometimes." "I know," I said, "but you're learning what's under it." He rested his head on my shoulder. "Thanks for not giving up on me." I didn't answer right away, because I wanted him to feel the truth of that moment, to know that it wasn't just about surviving this chapter. It was about learning how to turn the page. "I never even considered it," I finally said. We sat there until the rain stopped tapping on the windows, until the world felt a little quieter, a little safer. That night, in my journal, the last page in that worn-out notebook, I wrote, "He cried, not in secret, not in silence, but in front of me, and I didn't rush to fix him. I just stayed." This is the hardest part of parenting, learning that love doesn't always look like protection. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like a quiet presence beside their pain, like letting them fall apart so they can figure out how to put themselves back together, with you close enough to catch the pieces but far enough to let them try. He's not healed, he's healing, and so am I. Together, always. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like and subscribe to the channel to support us. We'd also love it if you left a comment telling us which city you're listening from and whether you identified with this mother in any way. Have you ever gone through something similar to this story? If you can, share it with another mother who might be needing this dose of affection and hope. You are very important to us, and we thank you for being part of this community of reflection and love. Thank you so much, and see you next time.